And 10 minutes later, he said, "Nobody move, please. We're going back to the airport. Don't try to make any stupid moves."
And then some asshole in the back's like, "I'm not trying to make stupid moves. I'm trying to make smart moves."
Well, no, he was...
Kill the nerd.
Heroes. The people on those planes were heroes.
So as far as the people on the ground were concerned, this is still a hostage type of situation.
Right.
These guys they're not scrambling jets or anything, because the people on the ground are like, okay, these guys have a bomb. There's some sort of like, it's like those it's like those plane hostage situations that used to happen all the time in the 70s.
And we will talk in further detail next episode about the war games that were being played during this time. Vigilant Guardian was being done. Another thing called, what was the other one called? Amalgam. Ugh, that's all even that. Yeah,
We'll get into all that stuff.
Yeah. So all these people on the ground, they're thinking, okay, let's not scramble the jets just yet. This is a hostage situation. We don't want to spook them. Let's let this be for a second. But what you also realize is that everything that happens extremely fast. All of this happens, but between the time that they hijack the flight and hit the first plane, less than 20 minutes.
Crazy.
So 10 minutes later, the plane's transponder is turned off, makes them pretty much invisible to air traffic control. And people always ask, why can you turn transponders off? Pilots turn the transponder off every time they're on the ground because it interferes with radio traffic. So a pilot turning on and off the transponder is as natural as anything else. It's something that they do multiple times every day.
I am very confused. It doesn't make the plane like the Wonder Woman plane.
Right, that's what I was
but
thinking.
I'm not a scientist or a pilot.
No.
Yeah. So it does take them about 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, the FAA, they contact NORAD, who scrambles jets to locate and tail Flight 11, but not one jet would even get off at the tarmac before the first plane hits.
I mean, 20 minutes is that's so quick.
It's unreal.
Yes.
So at 8...
You would not even get through an episode of, I don't even know.
I've been watching Review lately. I'm a big fan.
It's a good show. Thanks. Good show. I would also say, but technically our government had been preparing for this. That's where the lies come in later on when they say that we were never prepared for planes to fly into our World Trade Center, when they had actually had already planned for the thing over and over. It's
next episode.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, they understood that it was a possibility.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I've been screaming in an apartment for 5 days about what the government has done.
I'm not going to say that I've been balls deep in raw news footage for 5 or 6 days. I'm not going to say I spent 4 hours at the 9/11 museum yesterday. I'm not going to say that all of my dreams have been horrific or confusing, like that dream that I had where me and Miley Cyrus wrote a 9/11 musical together.
How's Carly doing, your girlfriend?
We had a big fight last night.
Cool.
Yeah, because I'm dead inside. I've been kind of hollow and not talking at all. And we got mad at each other because I didn't think she could, quote unquote, handle it. And she took that as an insult, which rightly she should have.
It's cool to date us.
I was thinking, the TV show I was thinking about was According to Jim.
22 minutes.
According to Jim.
I can't believe all of 9/11 happened over one episode of According to Jim.
Jim Belushi should have never been famous.
So at 8:42, Flight 93 takes off 40 minutes late. And this is extremely important because all of the flights were coordinated to take off at the same time. They were all supposed to take off around 8 a.m. Or at least within like 10 minutes of each other. And this one takes off 40 minutes later. And this is Flight 93. This is the one that crashes outside of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And the fact that this plane was late is the only reason why it did not crash into the Capitol building. That is the only reason why. If that flight would not have been late, they would have destroyed the Capitol building. Because we know, because Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was one of the architects that we captured a couple years afterwards, that's what they asked him what was the fourth target, Capitol building.
Right. Yeah.
So that would have been completely destroyed.
Again, not Menominee, Wisconsin. At no point was Menominee, Wisconsin.
Never once, not Lansing, Michigan.
No.
Not Troubadour, Texas.
No, not even Troubadour, Texas. Wow.
So this is when it starts getting intense. 8:46 a.m., first plane crashes, takes 7 floors of the North Tower. It takes from 93 to 99. While the plane disintegrated instantly, passengers from the plane were thrown out and landed on the ground, still strapped into their seats.
Now, this is when they first thought, when it first happened, everyone thought, of course, that it was an accident.
Right.
Yeah.
So they reported it like it was an accident. There was
Right.
some kind of pilot error.
And you recall there was a baseball player who flew a single-engine plane into a building a couple of years following. And
Yeah.
so these things did happen.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the biggest one of that. This was
Yeah.
probably the biggest bumble.
Well, no,
Of
there
all
was
time,
a plane
if it
flew into
was.
the Empire State Building in 3940.
Yeah, it's not, it's not unheard of.
Yeah, it's not unheard of.
Yeah, but that's when planes were made out of like balsa wood, and it just had a guy with a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
rubber band attached to like he would be doing a bicycle for the fucking propellers to spin on the side of it.
Right. I love your vision of the 40s.
So the wingspan of this plane, half a football field long, and the wings of the plane loaded with almost 10,000 gallons of jet fuel.
And most of that fuel still in it, again, such a short trip.
Yeah, such a short trip. So Marsh Inc., they were a company that was located on floors 93 to 100. That was the location of the impact. They lost 295 employees and 63 consultants instantly, while 5 floors above, Cantor Fitzgerald LP. They were an investment bank. They were on floors 101 to 105. They lost 658 employees in the ensuing fire.
Well, that reminds me of a time I was working in the finance district with a guy for a headhunting agency. I had sort of conned my way into this job. These are the events that like literally made some of these Wall Street traders into like Vietnam vets.
Right,
And I
right.
met one of these guys who was this guy named Will Stavenhagen, who was a headhunter that I worked for in our office. It was 3 people in the office, and he was a fucking nutbag. And he used to walk back and forth screaming like, "I never want to see you off the fucking phone." And he was insane.
Sounds like Jordan Belfort from Wolf of Wall
He
Street.
wanted to be like that.
Right.
And I remember one time we all go out for drinks. He's like, "Everybody get the fuck up. Get the fuck up. We're going out for drinks. It's Friday. We're going to go out. We're going to fucking relax." And he was, he's insane.
Like Jeremy Piven from PCU.
Yeah.
Go to sleep! Go to sleep!
And so we go to a bar across the street, and I sit with him, and at this time I'm in full hippie phase. I have like a 6-inch long fucking like goatee. My hair's really long. I had like I was just like all high, like just like all the time.
All high. 100% high.
And he bought us he's like, "Shots. We're doing shots." And he said, and he's just like, gets 2 shots, and I was just like, "Yeah, and it's kind of so what brought you into this thing?" And he's like, "All my friends died in 9/11.
Great.
And just took the shot. I'm just in that cool.
Yeah.
I want to be a sketch comedian. But no, these guys like, imagine that. Because
Yeah.
you know how many times in your life have you, straight up, I remember when I was working in an office and be like, "Man, I want to go down that street and I want to see that building in fucking flames, right? I want to come in. I will do anything to not work today."
Fantasy, yes.
And it's like, that shit was real.
Yeah,
right.
that
Should always
happened.
Horrifying.
Just make sure it stays a fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to remind you real quick how many people were at the World Trade Center, over the entire complex, buildings 1 through 7, over 250,000 people
Yeah.
were at the World Trade Center every single day.
I can't believe that, the people, there were many heroes that day.
Yeah, we'll cover a couple of them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And when the first plane hit, jet fuel shot down at least one elevator shaft. This gigantic fireball shot down an elevator shaft. It caused explosions on the 77th and 22nd floor, as well as at the street level on the west side lobby. It was so large that 18 people were burned by this fireball, and only 11 of them survived.
God, I don't want to be the 7 that lived.
I saw in the 9/11 museum they had on display a mask that one of these guys wore for 8 years because his face had to be constantly moisturized.
I'm just going to say this, okay? If you lose the face, if you're in a burn thing and you lose your whole face,
Get into radio.
don't get into radio. Number 1 is
Yeah.
great because, I've come to be weird showing like this all the time. I don't want to be really
Do not be mean. No.
be mean. But get like a Cobra Commander helmet and be a supervillain.
Yeah.
So, the flame goes down the entire elevator shaft. The debris from the initial crash caused absolute chaos on the ground. Cars were crashing into each other and were being set on fire. And you see the pictures of the aftermath. There are entire blocks where there are cars that are just shells.
Yeah.
Like the tires have burned down, the windows have busted out, and they're just absolute shells. Because you've got to realize that, when that plane goes through, there's a ton of debris. Literally tons of debris being flown onto the
It is
street.
true war footage.
The plane hit the building at over 500 miles
But that's
per
what they're
hour.
saying. They were like, a guy was saying he saw one of the witnesses on 102 Minutes was watching it from his roof. He was just out on his roof and he saw it happen. And he was like, this plane was just tearing ass. Like it was, he was like, it was really moving. And so what happened? It hits the windows, and so it's a moving explosion. Like it hits, it instantly explodes, but the momentum of it carries it so it shoots out the other side. It's crazy. It's just like it's a huge explosion.
And that documentary captured people, like you mentioned earlier, Henry, about how you almost thought it was, because it is so insane, it was almost like an action movie vibe.
Yeah.
And in Wisconsin, too, you're so disconnected. But even people watching it from, 15 blocks, 20 blocks away, they almost had a disconnect, too, when they had saw it at first. It wasn't, I wouldn't say laughter by any means, but it was like, what happened?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Holy shit! Yeah, it's just
exactly.
made me like, holy shit! Because
Are they filming a movie in Wall Street? What's happening?
Yeah, or it was a huge accident. You assume it's a huge accident, and it's more just being like, holy shit, look at that. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Right.
I've never seen that before, you know?
And I really did. I watched raw news footage from the first 2 hours. I watched the raw news footage from 3 separate stations. I watched the CNN one, which kind of proved that CNN has always been terrible. I watched the ABC one. Charlie Gibson is a wonderful journalist. But the best one that I watched was the local New York City NBC affiliate. Because you get the eyewitnesses right on the ground. You get you get New Yorkers calling in immediately and just saying, I saw this. And after the first plane hit, between the first and the second plane, everybody's just sort of bewildered.
Right.
They're not really, no one is even mentioning the word terrorism. No one wants, because it's starting to be like that, but you can kind of feel it itching in the back of everyone's brain.
Well, it's because this is before we've been fucking indoctrinated. Now we're indoctrinated to look for terrorism.
Well, we're
right?
going to get into terrorism and how that's created unlimited war because there's no borders and things like that.
Absolutely, but the idea is that now it's a word we think about every fucking day.
And like you mentioned with 9/11, I hadn't actually really thought about it as a brand, but it is a swoosh to some degree. It is the Nike swoosh when you think 9/11.
Oh, we got bought and sold. But we'll talk about that next episode.
Yes.
But again, what we talked about with Columbine, this place where those eyewitnesses were first starting to talk to the newspapers and stuff like that, and then to the news stations. That's where a lot of conspiracies got born immediately.
Right. Yeah. Because they were all in a panic. I mean, it's pretty crazy. As firefighters were going up into the buildings, reporters were running towards the smoke as well, but with a camera and a microphone, putting it in people's faces who were covered in soot as if they just got out of being a chimney sweep, and be like, what's going on? What you thinking? And it's like, what do you think?
Tell me, are you rehearsing to be Santa Claus later?
Well, the local NBC affiliate, the one that I watched, the on-the-ground reporters were fantastic. They were getting information while still being sensitive, people wanting to talk. And we'll listen later, because I will warn you later, we will be hearing some footage, both from on the ground and from inside the building.
The whole point of this is to make it as real as humanly possible.
This is real. This happened. Like, this was not an action movie, and it is so far removed now that's what this is. This is actually real. So because of the angle of the impact of the plane, all the stairwells and all of the elevators from the 92nd floor up were rendered completely unusable. It trapped 1,344 people above, and none of them would survive.
Nope.
Not a single one would get out. So the people in the towers, both above, both below, and in the second tower, knew nothing. This was pre-ubiquitous internet.
Because they felt it up. Of course they felt it up above. They said they felt the tower sway.
Yeah.
They felt the tower move and then snap back into position. But the people below it, because of the way these buildings are built, they're built to sort of move with like the wind and stuff like that. They did not feel it. Like, it happened, some power went out, and but no one actually heard the crash. They didn't feel the whole building shake.
Yeah. and the people calling emergency services, which were pretty much the only people that, and even emergency services didn't really know what was going on. But I also watched this other documentary called Inside the Towers, where it's a lot of people that were in there that got out. And this one woman said that she called up emergency services, and emergency services was telling them, like, yeah, you're in the first tower. Yes, Port Authority. Port Authority is they're the organization that managed the World Trade Center, the engineers, the blue collar guys. They're like, yes, Port Authority is saying that you should evacuate right now.
Yeah, go to use the stairwell and
Yeah,
stuff, and then
go-
you go out to the stairwell and there's nothing there.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
But they were being told by the emergency services to get out of there. But some of the companies came over their PA and said, "Please stay at your desks. Please stay at your desks. Do not evacuate.
Right.
Do not evacuate." So pretty soon afterwards, like I said, Port Authority starts evacuating the North Tower. They're telling the people in the South Tower to stay put, which was at the time the best idea. That's what they should have done.
Yeah, because they thought it was an accident.
Because they thought it was an accident. Because if you get everybody in both towers, if you get them all out on the street, the firefighters and the EMTs, they're going to have a lot harder time getting in to the North Tower to put out the fire, to rescue people. So they told everyone in the South Tower, all right, stay put. And there were people trying to get out. They wouldn't even let people in the second tower out of the building. They had security guards down at the bottom of the stairs barring the exit and saying, like, please return to your offices, please return to your offices, and thinking that this was all an accident. Emergency services, they get there within minutes, and the very first group of firefighters who showed up, they had a feeling like there was one guy who survived from this, and they all looked at each other. They said, there's a good chance we're not going to make it out of this
Oh yeah, you
alive.
look up
Right.
at this huge
Yeah.
building. You basically watch because it's like normal, and then those floors of just pure flame, and then the people you're supposed to save.
Yeah.
That's how brave. I mean, of course, it's like I know that there was sort of like a little bit of a period after 2001 where it's like the firefighters were America's superheroes,
Yeah.
and they were very, of course,
Oh,
like
they are,
Almost
yeah.
cultish.
cultish.
They deserve it.
But with this event specifically, of course, it's just shown to me like these are just civil servants. These are people that are just paid.
Yeah.
It's a job.
Firefighters don't write tickets when you have to go into the into the grocery store really quick. They don't give you a fine if you're drinking a beer on the street. All
But I'm also gonna
firefighters
say-
do is save people's lives.
But there were a lot of police officers that also lost their lives on
Yes,
this.
of course.
And it's like now we're in this sort of weird situation and a weird relationship with authority in America right now, according with like what's going on with how police officers are trained and how they're acting. And it's important to remember that they are men, and there's a lot of and women, and they're humans, and they're sacrificing
Well,
stuff for yourself.
we'll get into that in future episodes. In '93, they militarized the police because of the war on drugs. Obviously, after 2001, the war on terrorism, the police got remilitarized, and that's why we're having situations that we're having right now.
That's when
Yeah.
they started giving them tanks.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Even Stevens Point, Wisconsin, for example, my hometown, my little brother just called me. They got a brand new tank. Nothing has happened in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I think somebody stole a jar of Smuckers, like all
what
last
happened? Are
year.
they just filling it with like they're just filling it with brats?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a good cooker. It's a good cooker for July 4th because basically these police forces, if they don't spend the money, then they get their funding cut. So they're like, we want millions of dollars next year. Let's buy a tank.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
what happens. Anyway.
So out of that first group, they all acknowledged they're probably not going to get out of there alive. They all shook each other's hands, went up the stairs. Only one of those guys survived. And this is when it starts getting really intense. The jumpers. The jumpers start about 15 minutes after the first plane hit. And people on the ground, they said that the bodies hitting the ground sounded like sacks of cement. Like it was such a deep thud. And the myth that a lot of people have about jumpers from buildings, the myth that a lot of people have is that, you lose consciousness before you hit the ground. That is not true.
They weren't traveling fast enough.
Yeah, these bodies, they were traveling at a speed of about 150 miles per hour, which is enough to cause instant death, but not enough to cause them to lose consciousness.
Because it cut to them. I remember when you watch a lot of the the people in the street footage of the tower. As they were going up the World Trade Center, like you could see people waving shirts above the attack line, above the fire line.
Yep.
There were people waving shirts from the top, and they were all chained together. They were smashing out the windows,
which was a bad idea. Which was both a good idea and a bad idea.
It was a good idea for them because the heat's moving upwards, cooking them. They were trying, but the thing is, then the oxygen came rushing in from the broken windows, feeding the flames underneath them. I literally was watching 102 Minutes, and one of the people recording the building was like, "Oh, look, it's paper. Look, paper's coming out of the building." And then someone's like, "Wait a second, I think that's a person."
It was falling too fast.
Yeah. And then they were like, caught it, and then they were like, "Oh my God, that's a person," and they freak. Yeah. And I had to close my laptop.
It's so crazy.
Like I almost threw it across the room. It's kind of crazy because it's just one of those things. Right? The reason why to bring it up is it just show those are the moments of real claustrophobic panic that happen that make that's what's real about this. Whatever 9/11 was used for afterwards, in terms politically and on a global scale, is one thing, but this is the micro fucking tragedy. Is this kind of shit?
This is the humans. You got to remember that these were all humans. So at 8:50, President Bush. Of course, we've all seen the famous footage. He's listening to a group of kids reading a book called The Pet Goat in Sarasota, Florida.
Very ironic name, by the way.
Very much so. He's told
Baphomet, if you want to get into that.
No, it's not Baphomet. He wasn't teaching the children about Satan.
That's part 3.
The world's most dangerous book. We'll talk about it.
Yes, we will. So he's told that the second plane is hit, and he knew on the way to the elementary school. He had already been told that the first plane had been hit. But
and he said that he had watched video footage, which would have been completely impossible because it wasn't released until that afternoon. Actual video footage of the
he's not the most eloquent person. Yeah. So he waits a full 7 minutes before making a move.
I mean, he wanted to hear how the book ended.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then afterwards, he disappeared for most of the day. And we'll talk on the next one about what, personally, my belief.
Where did he go? What was he doing?
Dick Cheney was the president on 9/11.
Dick Cheney was the president.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and then he did have to catch up on episodes of According to Jim.
Oh, yeah. God, I love that. Yeah.
In later interviews with President Bush about the day of September 11th, a lot of his responses, you can tell, at least when he's talking about when he saw the footage, what his first reactions were, it seems scripted. It seems like someone has told him, okay, this is what you say, or at least this is what he's prepared for himself. It's this is what, because he's not a very good off-the-cuff speaker, so he's like, this is an important...
No, and you cannot fucking bungle up today, George.
Exactly. Well, he did a great... We'll get to... Yeah. I thought he did a good job with the loudspeaker there at the end of the day. But,
yeah. So he... he is like, okay, I can't mess this up. I have to have a prepared statement for when people interview me about this. But later on in that same interview, when he's talking about the aftermath of 9/11, what he had to deal with afterwards, he said something like, this is, I think, one of, if not the most telling sentence about the entire Bush administration. He said, I never campaigned that I could handle being a wartime president.
Of course, but when you bring on Rumsfeld, when you bring on Ashcroft, when you bring on Cheney, you bring the biggest hawks. H.W., his father, hated these guys, and he told him not to bring him into the administration. Rumsfeld immediately said Saddam had something to do with it, and Bush ran on a campaign of being a compassionate conservative who cared about education. Yeah. And then he's the perfect pawn for 9/11.
So at 9:02 a.m., 17 minutes after the first plane hits, Port Authority officially orders the total evacuation of both buildings. That's when someone, again, gets a little itch in the back of their head that says, okay, something's wrong here. Up to 14,000 people are already evacuating when they make this call. And 1 minute after they make the call to evacuate both buildings, United 175 crashes into floors 75 to 85 of the South Tower, much lower than the first. And you can see on 102 Minutes is that the streets of Manhattan just go insane.
Because they realize, this is terrorism. Right. Yeah. This is on purpose.
The guy that, Jose, that we just hired here, I said earlier that he was 11 when he saw it. he was there with his older brother who was a teenager. When the first plane hit, they started walking towards it,
Right.
because it was a curiosity. It was like, oh, let's go see, let's see what's happening here. And he said when the second plane hit, they just instinctively started running in the
Which everybody did.
opposite direction.
People were freaking out, and I saw it live. I saw the second plane hit live.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
And that was
on TV.
insane. That was insane.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. In fact, we're going to start playing stuff now. We're going to play some video clips. This first clip is from the people on the ground. This is real reactions from people. This is a bunch of this is just NYU students uptown.
What is that falling? Oh my God, don't be a person.
Where?
Oh my God.
Where? That right there?
What are those big heavy things falling at a rate that a piece of paper would not fall? Oh my God.
No way.
Like that, Caroline, do you see that? Do you see this thing?
Yeah, I see it. I mean, who's to say it's not like a chair?
Please be a chair. Please be a chair.
Regardless, it's gonna be so dangerous at that base. Obviously. Wait. Oh my God!
What? Oh my God! It's terrorist act!
What do we do?
So you can definitely tell the mood changes.
Yeah. The mood changes from this kind of detached,
Right.
Like, maybe it's chairs or something like
Nope.
that. Like it's just sort of, and it's like, oh man, it's got to be so dangerous. Like it goes from, because you talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people on the street too, and a lot of people in these videos, they're just like, oh my God, like
Look at those people.
Look at those people. Like,
Truly empathetic. Like
Truly.
looking at these people. I feel like that's to be honest, a measure of New Yorkers' character.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that we got is there is a sense of Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude in New York, right? Where it's like seeing somebody else's misery a little bit because we're all kind of miserable. But there's also that other thing of like a great sort of like commiseration of like, you could imagine yourself having gone all the way into work,
Right.
An hour commute all the way into work, and then this shit happens. Where it's like, even because at that point it's just an accident, and you imagine yourself like up there. New Yorkers are like have a lot of beautiful kind of energy. There's a great spirit here, where it's like you see that a lot with this footage, or people being concerned for people in the towers and not talking shit.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I mean, New Yorkers are some of the nicest people in the world because they don't fake kindness. When they're nice to you, you know they mean it. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
That's why I love the
you know,
city so much.
Like we all saw this on, or I mean, at least I did, and I know Marcus, far removed. I mean, New York deals with things. New
Yeah.
York dealt with this. I mean, it's crazy to think about. We can watch it and we know the ramifications in a theoretical level, but to be there is a whole other story.
And again, how do you feel about this, guys? Right? Do you feel that 9/11 and the coverage of 9/11, right? Because they were saying before, it's like they really were trying to get the facts right. They weren't trying to jump on it. They were filling the air with noise,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
they were trying to cover it as much as possible. But do you really feel like that we were looking at that before 9/11 and the day of 9/11, we're looking at the last bits of non-staged news reading that has happened since? I feel like the tone of how things are covered and the way when we talk about 9/11 as a brand has been so pervasive over the last 15 years that we can't even see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, I think
anymore?
that 9/11 was, and we'll listen right now to the ABC News, like them actually with the footage on their screen. I think it is the last instance of honest journalism.
I feel
that
like
has ever
well-
happened. Attached to journalism.
now everything
that wasn't just about outrage. Like you would think Sandy Hook, there would be some sort of emotional attachment to that.
Immediately branded.
Immediately branded and immediately in the media used as a political football, that this can be used to argue my point. This can be used to argue my
right.
point.
What they have done is taken our emotions from us. And we're going to talk about this in conspiracy as well. What they've done, I think a part of it is this, where it's like, like all of a sudden it's like how they covered the shootings that happened yesterday of the camerawoman and the reporter when the cameraman and the reporter that were shot, and the way they immediately sort of flipped it. And they took his footage, and it was like they almost made it better the way they took it off his Facebook page, and they showed the first person footage of him fucking shooting those people, which is horrific, and no one should watch it. And they took that, and then they immediately ripped it down, like it was like, and they almost like kind of coyly presented how they took it down. We have since this day we've been watching nothing but theater on television.
Yeah.
Well, of course, television news is never going to be accurately describing the events because they're all paid for by companies like Northrop Grumman and major manufacturers of weapons.
And again, who benefits from 9/11? We want to get into that. We'll get into that
in future episodes, of course.
Qui bono.
Qui bono. Damn it, dog meat. You're getting too real.
Let's listen to.
This whole episode's a little too real.
Yeah. All right. Here we are.
Not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
My God.
That looks like a second plane.
Terrible.
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
We just saw another plane coming in from the side.
You did. That was out of
Yes, and that's
view.
the second explosion. You could see the plane come in just from the right-hand side of the screen. So this looks like it is some sort of a concerted.
And that's one thing that you also hear in the newsroom is you hear them when it hits. You hear the, oh my God, like everybody just stopping and staring, and then after about 10 seconds, they gather themselves. And they're like, oh, this is like, oh, we have a job to do.
Now we have to report it as accurately as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And then, but also then you get to people on the street, and what's the first thing they said? It's like you watch it too, in 102 minutes, when that second plane hits, and they're all, you just gotta be like, it's immediately someone's just like, Osama bin Laden. Like
Yeah.
they just start saying that shit, and they're like, and then, or the miserable.
In the Times Square footage that they have, it's people like, oh, Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, I mean,
because we knew, of course they knew, because
We've
Osama
been
bin
setting
Laden.
him up for a long time. If we want to say, if we're looking to cast a villain,
Well,
we were making him a
yeah,
real.
yeah.
we didn't set him up.
I mean,
we just
because-
chose not to murder him.
Yeah, he was also he was a part of the 1993 bombings, and he had also been a part of the USS Cole bombing
Clinton
from
should
2
have
years
killed him.
earlier.
Absolutely,
Bill
yeah.
Clinton should have killed Osama bin Laden.
Yeah,
He's our Christoph Waltz from back in the day, the permanent villain.
Yeah, I think the media, they were just frankly too shocked to get stuff wrong. They are so careful to not get anything wrong on this. And I think, it was the death knell of good journalism. And
Charlie Rose is still out there.
Yeah, everyone loves Charlie Rose.
All right.
So 32 minutes after that, Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon, the forgotten attack, killing 59 on the plane and 125 military and civilian personnel inside the building.
On a side of the Pentagon that happened to be under construction, that was also built to withstand a missile attack. Very interesting how it hit it on a very specific side. If you want to talk also about the weird maneuver it made, almost like a military jet pilot, the way it made when it swooped around. And
Next
We'll
episode.
get into that in the
next episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
it's hard.
Yeah, I know.
It's hard. I get upset.
I know.
I've been getting a little upset the last couple of days.
So ground crews, they had only found out 10 minutes earlier that Flight 77 had been hijacked. And it's at this point that planes were only grounded in the New York City area. Okay, think about this. There were 3 planes that had so far flown into targets. There were 4,000 planes still in the air.
Right.
They could attack literally anywhere in the United States. They did not know where the next attack was coming from. And that is when the FAA grounded all flights, which took 2 hours to get all of these flights on the ground, which is both terrifying and impressive all at the same time, because it was still 2 hours where there were flights in the air.
You mean tell me I'm not going to see Maiden at fucking Lollapalooza?
That's not right, man. Real victims all across the country.
Oh, yeah. So when firefighters finally arrived at the top levels, they found that all of the water lines had been cut. There was no water up there. The sprinkler systems in the office also completely cut. This combined with the heat of an office fire, which office fires are notoriously the hottest of all building fires because paper.
Yeah.
So much paper. And you think all these financial institutions, this is 2001.
Right.
This was back when they had
Reams of paper.
entire floors
Just
of
paper.
files.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
paper. And that burns hot.
It could all be held in an iPad today, but
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And the temperature up there, with the, of course, the jet fuel, the paper, which was burning much hotter than the actual jet fuel. So this is a 911 call from the 83rd floor in Tower 2, and this is definitely this one's pretty intense. We're gonna play a couple parts from it, the beginning and the end.
Yeah, the World Trade Center. Someone having difficulty breathing on the 83rd floor. Okay, ma'am, how you doing?
Are they going to be able to get somebody up here?
Well, of course, ma'am. We're coming up to you.
Well, there's no one here yet, and the floor is completely engulfed. We're on the floor, and we can't breathe.
Okay.
And it's very, very, very hot.
Are the lights still on?
The lights are on, but it's very hot.
Ma'am,
Very hot. We're all the way on the other side of Liberty, and it's very, very hot.
Any lights? You can turn the lights off?
No, the lights are off.
Okay, good. Now, everybody stay calm. You're doing a good job.
It's also like for these people that they're calling, it's above their pay grade.
Yeah.
So they're used to like somebody
they're not-
getting stabbed in the subway or
But their jobs are to be reasonable. Their jobs are to, in the face of emergency, is to be. You have to be held together. You have
in
to
a
be able to.
situation like this, you just sort of want to not tell them that they're about to die, I guess.
No,
Well,
you have to
that's-
be a voice of rationality.
I mean, that's exactly what this part of the call's about.
Listen. The call is in. I'm documenting. I'm going to let those... Hold on 1 second, please.
I'm going to die, aren't I?
No.
I'm going to die.
Ma'am, say your prayers. And we're going
die.
to think positive because you got to help each other get off the floor. Now, stay calm. You're doing a good job, ma'am. You're doing a good job.
It's so hot. I'm burning up.
Like that is a person doing their fucking job.
Yeah.
And doing it well.
Yes,
Like
and-
the operators, I don't think they get credit for giving people comfort.
And
in
I
the
don't
last
think they
moments.
got enough credit as far as the PTSD that the event caused. I mean, you're literally listening into the last breaths of a human being's life that you have no idea who they are. I mean, at some point, if I was that woman on that phone call, I would like to know who I was just speaking to.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Just
bet
to get
that is.
closure. I mean, it's so traumatic.
It's very traumatic.
Yeah, they found out her name was Melissa. So since there was no water lines for these firefighters to use up there, their primary job became to bust out doors because the impact of the jet hitting, both of the jets hitting, was so powerful, the towers shifted enough to jam most of the doors in their frames, making it impossible to open them up without the aid of an axe. And that's why a lot of people, especially near the areas of impact, below below the impact, all the doors were jammed. They were stuck in their offices. They could not get out.
Right.
There were a few people who were able to find little pieces of drywall if someone
could
happened
punch through?
that they could punch through. There was one group of guys that were stuck in an elevator. They dug through drywall and busted out a wall and came out in the bathroom. Because that was rare. Most of these people were stuck, and that's why so many firefighters died. Because that's what they were doing.
Well, they were trying to make their way because they didn't.
Yeah.
Because again, we had all been under the idea that these towers were supposed to be able to stand even if they got hit by a fucking plane. That we hear that soundbite
they
over
were
and
made
over
in
again.
1901, and no plane existed. I mean, they
No, they
they
were
said-
built in 1972.
1972, no plane existed.
No, we were just. I'm just saying that's why they went in with that belief system that they're not going to fall.
Well,
it's just a fire.
Well, no, the Port Authority guys, the engineers, these two guys, let's see here, Frank DiMartini and Pablo Lopez, who ended up saving about 50 people. That was their primary concern. They thought, like, we have to go check on the structural integrity of this building. They weren't confident at all.
I know, but firefighters don't know because they're used to they're using just office fires. They consider this like a fire, right? Yes, a plane hit it, but then also you look at this big, huge building and you think, oh, that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so they're up there just being like, we got to get through this until we can get the lines up here to start, because the helicopters were already starting their way up to try to blast a fire water, like you hit it with hoses from the side, and it's. That's one of those things. You trust a building.
Yeah.
Do you trust a building to stand? You know, like you think that this is the worst it can get.
Yeah. One group of survivors, this to me is amazing. One group of survivors, they busted through these doors that had actually been blocked from the smoke, because some of the doors were actually airtight enough where smoke wasn't coming through the doors. They busted open the door. There's an inferno behind them. There's just smoke. They're all covered in soot. And they found a secretary at her desk on the phone with her boss going over his appointments for the next week.
God damn.
Right.
Like, just not, and they come in and she's like, there's something happening. There's something going. I need to go. And he's yelling at her. Like, just yelling, like, no, I didn't. She's like,
I
no.
gotta see Brian next week. I'm gonna get croissants with Brian.
Yeah. But that's also like it's two separate. I mean, it's like this denial,
Right,
And
right,
you
right,
also
right.
see that people on the ground. You see footage like I remember this image really sticks out in my head. A woman